I didn't even hear the water until I stepped in it. It was past midnight. I was coming back from a shift at the bar, still half-hyped from dealing with a Friday night crowd, shoes untied, earbuds in, brain on autopilot. I opened my apartment door, kicked off my shoes, and then my socks went squelch. I froze. The light from the hallway barely reached into my unit, but it was enough to see the glistening sheen across the floor. My living room carpet shimmered wet under the dull glow, and the air already smelled like mildew. "Fuck," I muttered, yanking my earbuds out and flicking the light switch. Nothing. The power was dead. Great. My first instinct was to find the source. I sloshed barefoot through the water, which was maybe an inch deep and cold as hell. It seemed to be coming from the wall near the kitchen, under the cabinets, maybe the bathroom. Either way, I was screwed. I was about to call emergency maintenance, but then I remembered my landlord, Mark, had told me last week that the building's overnight emergency line had been rerouted temporarily. I couldn't remember the number he'd given me, so I just called him directly. I didn't expect him to pick up. It was past midnight, and he was the kind of guy who seemed like he had boundaries. Professional. Distant. Always polite, but never chatty. Still, after 2 rings, "Hello?" His voice sounded deeper than usual, slightly raspy. Probably woken up. "Hey, sorry, it's Jake from 2B. I've got a flood in here. Like, actual water everywhere." There was a pause, then a shuffle. "Is it coming from your place or above?" "No idea. I just got in. Power's out, too. I'll be there in 5. True to his word, Mark showed up wearing sweatpants, a zip hoodie, and flip-flops, flashlight in hand. I'd never seen him look less composed, and somehow, it made him more intimidating. His hair was still sleep mussed, and his jaw was stubbled. The guy was in his mid-30s, probably 10 years older than me, with this unshakable calm that made you feel like things were going to be all right, if he was the one handling it. "Jesus," he muttered as he stepped inside. "You weren't kidding." He walked around, poked at the water, checked the pipes in the bathroom, and finally shut off the main valve in the hallway. The silence that followed was deafening. Mark looked at me, eyebrows raised. "You didn't use your shower tonight?" "Nope, just got back." He nodded slowly. "Looks like the leak's coming from the unit above you. Probably a busted supply line." "Cool. So, what happens now?" Mark rubbed the back of his neck, then looked at me again. "You got somewhere else to crash tonight?" I laughed, dry. "What do you think?" He didn't answer right away. Then, "You can stay in the guest room at my place, if you're comfortable with that," I blinked. "Seriously? It's clean, has a bed, and it's dry." I should have said no. Should have gone to a friend's or curled up on a towel at the laundromat like a broke little gremlin. But I was tired. Wet. Cold. And when someone offers you something that generous in the middle of the night, you don't question it. "Yeah," I said. "Okay." His apartment was a whole other universe compared to mine. Top floor, hardwood floors, high ceilings, everything tidy but lived in, bookshelves, soft lighting, a French press drying on a rack. It smelled like eucalyptus and clean laundry. Mark showed me to the guest room, which was simple: bed, dresser, a lamp on the nightstand. He handed me a towel and an old hoodie. "Shower if you need to. Bathroom's just down the hall." "Thanks again," I said. My voice came out smaller than I meant it to. He nodded, then hesitated. "You all right?" "Yeah. Just weird being here, I guess." Mark gave me a small smile. "I get it. It's not exactly a 5-star hotel." "No, I mean, it's nice. Just weird, being in your space. You always seem so—" I trailed off. "So what?" I shrugged. "I don't know. Private." He didn't respond right away. Then he said, "I am, usually." Then he turned and went back to his room, leaving me standing there with his hoodie in my hands, the hem still warm from his dryer. I didn't fall asleep right away. Even though the bed was warm and the sheets smelled like lavender detergent, my brain wouldn't turn off. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, listening to the occasional creak of the building settling and the soft hum of Mark's air purifier from down the hall. His hoodie was too big on me, the sleeves swallowing my hands. I should have taken it off to sleep, but something about the way it smelled, clean, a little woodsy, maybe cologne, kept me from doing that. I checked my phone. No new messages. A couple of missed calls from work, probably wondering if I'd be in for my shift tomorrow. I didn't respond. Instead, I got up. The apartment was mostly dark, save for the light spilling faintly from under the kitchen door. I padded out into the hallway barefoot, unsure why I was even moving. Maybe I just needed water. Maybe I just wanted to feel less like a guest. I found Mark standing at the stove, stirring something in a pot. He looked up, surprised but not annoyed. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked. I shook my head. "Not really." "You hungry?" I blinked. "Are you making soup?" He nodded, then tilted the pot to show me. "Miso." "Couldn't sleep either." I leaned against the counter, arms folded. "You always cook at 1 a.m.? "Only when I have unexpected guests with wet socks." I smiled. He said it so deadpan, but there was a softness behind the joke, something almost warm. We sat at the table a few minutes later, each with a steaming mug of soup. It was surprisingly good, salty, hot, comforting. I didn't say much, neither did he, but the silence didn't feel awkward. Eventually I asked, "You live here alone?" Mark nodded. "Yeah, have for a while." "Ever get bored?" "Sometimes, but I like the quiet." He glanced at me. "You?" "Always lived with roommates." "Or noise." "This is the most silence I've had in a while." He nodded again, thoughtful. Then he asked, "So what do you do when you're not dealing with flooded apartments?" I told him about bartending, about the dumb things people say after their fourth whiskey sour, about my side hustle doing commissions for local bands, flyers, posters, social stuff. He listened, really listened, not just polite nods like he actually gave a damn. "I always figured you were some kind of creative," he said when I finished. I raised an eyebrow. "Why?" He shrugged. "The way you dress, your energy, the tattoos." "You noticed my tattoos?" His mouth twitched. "Hard not to when your arm's covered in koi fish and neon mushrooms." I laughed, surprised by how easy it was to talk to him now. He wasn't just the landlord anymore. He felt human. Real. Kinda sharp, but also patient in a way I hadn't expected. He stood to rinse out his bowl, and one watched the muscles in his back shift under his shirt as he moved. Then I caught myself and looked away quickly, heart skipping a beat. When he turned around, he leaned against the sink, arms folded, watching me. Something in his expression had changed. Less casual. More curious. "I don't usually let tenants crash at my place," he said. "Yeah?" I tried to keep my tone light, but my chest tightened. He nodded. "Just saying, this isn't normal." I wasn't sure what he meant by that, if it was a warning or something else entirely. But I felt it too. That weird shift in the air, the quiet tension. "So," I said, standing slowly, "should I? Like, go back to the guest room?" He watched me for a long second, then gave the smallest shrug. "Only if you want to." That answer sat in the air between us, charged and heavy. I swallowed, suddenly aware of how close we were standing. Not close, but enough that I could see the faint stubble on his neck and the way his eyes lingered on mine just a second too long. Eventually, I turned and walked back toward the hallway, my pulse loud in my ears. But I swear I felt his eyes on me the whole way. The next morning, Mark was already gone. I found a sticky note on the kitchen counter. "Plumber's coming by around 11. Help yourself to coffee. M." I read it 3 times, trying to figure out if there was any subtext in the way he'd signed it with just an M. Probably not. But my brain was still in overdrive from whatever that moment between us had been last night. The coffee was strong, dark roast, and brewed perfectly. I took it back to the guest room and sat on the edge of the bed, staring out the window at the quiet city below. My flooded apartment was 2 floors down, filled with drying fans and whatever ancient curse lived in that plumbing. And here I was, still wearing his hoodie, still thinking about the way he'd looked at me in the kitchen like he wasn't quite sure what he was doing, but kind of wanted to keep doing it anyway. Around noon, the plumber showed up. I let him in, texted Mark that the guy was here, and spent the next couple of hours listening to pipes clank and valves squeal. Mark didn't come back until almost 6. He walked in carrying 2 bags of takeout, Thai food, the kind that smells like heaven and makes your stomach forget you had snacks earlier. He barely said hello before handing me a box and setting down the rest on the dining table. "I figured you probably haven't eaten anything that wasn't toast," he said. "Wow, you think I'm a toast guy?" "You give off toast energy," I laughed. "That's offensive. I'm at least, I don't know, waffles." He grinned at that, a real grin this time. It made something twist in my chest. Dinner was easy. We sat across from each other, trading bites, arguing about which curry was best, and occasionally dipping into quiet, comfortable silences. I hadn't had a meal like that in a long time. No pressure, no expectations, just good food and this strangely magnetic man across the table. "You always this generous to your tenants?" I asked halfway through the meal. He gave me a look. No, no, as in I'm special, or no, as in this is a one-time thing. He wiped his mouth with a napkin, set it down, and met my eyes. "You're not just a tenant." There it was again. That thing in the air. I swallowed and looked down at my plate. My heart was thudding way too hard for a casual dinner, and yet I didn't feel like running. I felt drawn in. Curious, nervous in a way that had nothing to do with anxiety and everything to do with possibility. Later, while we were cleaning up, he asked, "Any word from your insurance yet?" I shook my head. "Probably won't hear anything until next week. They move slow. I might be out of that place for a while." Mark nodded slowly. "The guest room's yours, as long as you need it." I paused. "Thanks. Seriously." He turned to face me then, one hand resting on the edge of the counter. "You make it easy." "What do you mean?" He shrugged, but didn't look away. "I don't usually do well with people in my space. But with you, it feels normal." I didn't know what to say to that. My stomach flipped. I wanted to say something. Anything. But the words got stuck somewhere between my chest and throat. I could feel my pulse in my ears, and I swear he could see it too. So instead of saying anything, I nodded. And then the moment broke. He stepped away, started wiping the counters, but the weight of what he said stayed heavy between us. That night, I lay in bed again, staring at the ceiling. I'd gone through the usual checklist, brushed teeth, plugged in my phone, adjusted the blankets, but I was wide awake. Just before midnight, I heard footsteps in the hallway. A soft knock came at my door. The knock wasn't loud. It was soft, hesitant, like he wasn't sure if he should even be standing there. I sat up, heart already climbing up into my throat. "Yeah?" I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. The door creaked open. Mark stepped in, barefoot, wearing a worn t-shirt and black joggers that hung low on his hips. He didn't come far. Just inside the door frame, one hand still on the knob. "Sorry," he said, his voice low. "Didn't mean to wake you if you were asleep." "I wasn't," I said quickly. "What's up?" He hesitated. The room was dim, just the soft bedside lamp casting a warm yellow hue across the blankets. He looked like he wanted to say something but kept getting stuck at the edge of it. "I couldn't sleep," he finally admitted. "Thought maybe you couldn't either." I nodded slowly. I couldn't. We stared at each other for a beat. The space between us felt strange now, like it had shrunk. Or maybe like it wanted to. "You want to sit?" I asked. Mark walked over and lowered himself onto the edge of the bed, facing away slightly, like he was giving me space even now. His hands rested on his knees. He looked tired, but not in a bad way, just like someone who'd had too much time to think. "I don't usually let people in like this," he said. "I'm not trying to get anything out of it," I replied, honest. "I know." He paused. "That's probably why I let you stay." That silence rolled in again, heavy but not uncomfortable. His eyes flicked to the hoodie I was wearing. His hoodie, and lingered there just a second too long. "I see you made yourself at home," he said. "It's comfortable." He smiled faintly. "Looks better on you anyway." That was the first moment I realized I wasn't imagining this. The look he gave me, it wasn't just friendly. It wasn't just polite or grateful or kind. It had weight. It had questions buried in it. I shifted slightly, unsure what to say, but he beat me to it. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Sure." Mark turned to face me more fully, his knee brushing mine. "Have you felt this too? Whatever this is." I froze, not because I didn't know the answer, but because I knew it way too clearly. "Yeah," I said softly. "I felt it." There was a breath between us, thick and tight. His eyes searched mine, and for the first time since I'd met him, he looked unsure, vulnerable. "I don't know what I'm doing," he said. "This wasn't supposed to happen." "You're a tenant?" I cut in gently. He shook his head. "Not anymore. You're more than that. You've been here less than a week, and I already—" He trailed off, then let out a low laugh, shaking his head. "God, I sound insane." "You don't," I said. I reached for his hand. Cautious. Not pushing. Just touching. He didn't pull away. In fact, his fingers curled around mine slowly, deliberately, like he was letting go of something inside him. He looked at me like he was memorizing the way it felt. "I don't want to mess this up," he said, voice barely audible. "Then don't," I replied. He leaned in just a bit. Not enough to close the space, but enough that the intention was there. My pulse was hammering now, but I didn't move away. I didn't say anything. He pulled back slightly, his hand still in mine. "I should let you sleep." "Mark." He stopped. "You don't have to go." That changed something in his face. His mouth parted like he was about to say something else, but instead, he just nodded. He didn't get under the blankets, just lay on top of them beside me, his head on the other pillow, his hand still loosely holding mine between us. It wasn't anything dramatic. There were no fireworks, no declarations, just quiet closeness. But lying there beside him, in a room that wasn't mine, wearing his hoodie and watching his chest rise and fall, I couldn't remember the last time I'd felt so safe. I must have fallen asleep at some point, because when I woke up, the light coming in through the window was soft and gray. It was still early. The kind of early that felt private, like the world hadn't decided to start moving yet. Mark was still beside me. He hadn't moved much, still lying on top of the covers, one arm tucked under his head, the other resting loosely between us, just inches away from mine. His face looked different in sleep. Softer. Younger, maybe. There was a calmness there I hadn't seen when he was awake. I watched him for a moment, wondering what the hell I was doing here. Not just in this room, but in his life. What this even was. But whatever confusion was swirling around in my head didn't stop me from noticing how much I liked it. Being next to him. Waking up like this. He stirred a little, eyes fluttering open. When he saw me looking at him, he blinked a few times, then offered the smallest, sleepiest smile. "Morning," he said, voice hoarse. "Hey," I whispered back. We stayed like that for a minute, not talking, not touching, just existing in the same space like it was the most natural thing in the world. Eventually, he stretched and sat up slowly. "I should probably check in on the apartment, see if the fans are working." "Want me to come with?" Mark gave me a look, half amused, half grateful. "You don't have to." "I know, I want to." He smiled, and something about it felt different this time. Less guarded. We walked down to my unit together, and yeah, it still smelled like wet drywall and regret. The carpet was ripped up in some spots. A few things had been moved around by the maintenance guys. It didn't feel like home anymore. "You're definitely going to be out for at least another week," he said after a quick look around. "Maybe more," I nodded. I kind of figured. Mark rubbed the back of his neck. "That still okay? You staying upstairs?" "Yeah," I said. Then added, "If you still want me there." He looked at me like I'd just asked the dumbest question in the world. "Of course I do." We went back upstairs, and the rest of the day passed in this strange, quiet rhythm. Coffee, laundry, both of us half working from home. At one point, he sat on the couch next to me with his laptop open, our legs brushing now and then. Neither of us moved away. By evening, we were cooking dinner together. Well, kind of. He was doing most of the actual cooking, and I was standing nearby pretending to help. "So," he said, not looking at me, "what are people gonna say?" "About what?" "You, living with your landlord, sleeping in his guest room," I smirked. "You worried about scandal?" He glanced over, a little. I'm not, I said. Let them talk. That earned me another one of his slow smiles, the kind that felt like it peeled back a little more of who he was. Later that night, we were watching some dumb movie on the couch. It had been on for almost an hour, and I couldn't tell you a single thing about the plot. What I could tell you was how it felt to sit next to him, our shoulders touching, his hand eventually finding its way to mine again. He didn't say anything when he did it, just linked our fingers gently, casually, like we'd been doing this for years. At one point, I leaned my head against his shoulder. He didn't move. Just let me stay there, his thumb brushing slowly along my knuckles. It wasn't complicated. Not yet. But it was definitely something. By the fourth night, it wasn't even a question anymore. After brushing our teeth and finishing the half-hearted show we'd been pretending to care about, Mark just looked at me and nodded toward his room instead of the guest one. I didn't argue. He didn't say anything as I followed him inside, and I didn't need him to. We didn't talk much, didn't ask what this meant or what we were doing. It wasn't about defining it. It was about what felt right. And somehow, this did. We didn't get under the covers right away. We lay there on top of the sheets again, facing each other. Closer this time. The space between us smaller than it had ever been. I've been thinking about this, he said quietly. Me too. He hesitated. I'm not used to this kind of thing. What kind of thing? He swallowed. Letting someone in. I nodded slowly, keeping my voice soft. Same. He reached up and pushed a strand of hair off my forehead. It was a small thing, but it felt weirdly intimate, like he'd been wanting to do it since the first day and finally gave himself permission. I keep trying to tell myself this is a bad idea, he said. And yet. That night, we didn't just hold hands. I don't mean we slept together. Not like that. I mean, we actually slept together. I woke up at 2 a.m. tangled in his arms, his breath warm against the back of my neck, his hand resting low on my stomach. And for a moment, I let myself believe this was just how things were now. That I belonged there. I didn't move, not even when his fingers shifted slightly. Not even when I felt the subtle pressure of his body tightening behind me. He didn't say anything. Neither did I. I let it happen. I let the quiet speak for us. In the morning, I woke up to find him already up, making coffee in the kitchen. He looked at me like nothing had changed, but something definitely had. We both felt it. Over the next few days, we settled into a rhythm. Wake up, coffee, check on the apartment, work. But there were new things now, like the way he'd nudge my shoulder when he passed by, or how he'd put an extra egg on my plate at breakfast without asking, how he'd squeeze my knee gently under the table if we were eating quietly. He wasn't distant anymore. If anything, he felt steady, like he'd decided something and was sticking with it. But one afternoon, as we sat across from each other eating leftover curry, he asked, "So what happens when your apartment's fixed?" I looked up. His tone was careful, but I heard the question behind the question. I set my fork down. What do you want to happen? I don't know, he said. I didn't expect this. I didn't expect you. Same. He nodded slowly, staring at his plate. I'm not looking for something casual. Good, I said, because I'm not either. That got his attention. His eyes met mine, and there it was again. That unspoken understanding sitting between us, as clear as ever. It wasn't just about a flood, or a guest room, or temporary shelter. This was something else now, and we both knew it. The apartment was finally ready a week later. The plumber gave the all clear. The fans were gone, the carpet had been replaced, and everything smelled like lemon-scented cleaner and fresh paint. In theory, it was perfect. Back to normal. But when I stepped into the place, it felt hollow. Mark stood just inside the doorway with his hands in his pockets, watching me. You gonna move back in tonight? He asked. I glanced around. My stuff had been boxed and stacked neatly in the corner by the building staff. Nothing was out of place. But it didn't feel like mine anymore. Not after everything that happened upstairs. I turned to face him. Do you want me to? He didn't answer right away, just took a slow breath and stepped farther inside. "I liked having you up there," he said. "More than I expected to. I liked being there." The silence that followed wasn't tense. It was open. Like we were standing on the edge of something and waiting for one of us to take the next step. "You don't have to move back," he said finally. "Not if you don't want to." I raised an eyebrow. "You offering permanent guest room privileges now?" Mark gave me a look. "No, I'm offering something else." He stepped closer. Close enough that I could feel the warmth off his body. See the way his jaw flexed when he was trying to keep his voice steady. "You want this to be real?" he asked. "Yes," I said, no hesitation. "Do you?" "I wouldn't be here if I didn't." That was it. No big speech, no dramatic music. Just two people in an empty apartment with 1,000 things left unsaid. But the most important one already out there. I didn't move back in. That night, we ordered takeout again. Ty, same place. Ate it on his couch, our legs tangled under a blanket like nothing had changed except everything had. And when we went to bed, he didn't just lie beside me. He pulled me into his chest and kissed the back of my neck like he'd been waiting to do it for years. Slow, soft, familiar somehow. There was no plan, no timeline. No perfect ending, just the quiet promise of something real. A relationship that didn't start with a dating app or some grand gesture, but a flooded apartment, a spare hoodie, and a landlord who turned out to be more than just the guy who fixed my sink. He became the guy who saw me, really saw me, and decided to stay.